Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast with your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I'm joined by Gemma Downing from Mixxos. Gemma, I'm pretty sure I said your name right because when I met you, I got it wrong about 15 times, didn't I?
You did. You had to put your teeth back in, didn't you? Hello, how are you doing?
I'm really well, Gemma. I'm really well. I'm really excited to do this episode. For people that don't know, so Gemma reached out to me on LinkedIn maybe a few weeks after I launched the podcast. And I think you were like the fifth person that asked if I was going to the recruitment agency expo. And I was like, right, universe is giving me a sign here. I have to go to the expo. And we met and we spoke and we've got so much in common. We're both so passionate about the industry, driving standards and all that type of stuff. And we recorded a really cool video that's on YouTube for people to go and see. But no, I'm really, really excited for this one, Gemma. But for people that may or may not know you, give us a bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do.
Yeah, of course. So I'm co-owner of Mixxos Group, and my mission basically is to help ambitious organizations find and hire the best talent for their business and take their vision as such into a reality. It's myself and Chris Mapp. He's the other co-owner of Mixxos. We specialize in head office and commercial, and most recently industrial and warehouse on the temp, perm and contract side. Largely at the moment, we're in Milton Keynes, kind of Beds, Luton, Dunstable, and our kind of aim is to dominate those areas. It's really easy as an entrepreneur, especially as a recruiter, to kind of be like, oh, there's something over here, there's something over there. And we've had lots of people say, come and expand into the US. And whilst that's incredible, I think for us right now, it's like just double down on what we're doing great at and maximize on that.
Yeah, nice. That's so similar to the philosophy I say to recruiters to be fair, I did steal this from Gary Vee. He said this years ago that if you're really good at something, triple down on that. If you're not so good at something, just marginally get better at that, or, pardon the pun here, get 1% better every day on that one thing,
Yeah,
but then really triple down onto the things you're really good at. But when we first spoke, we jumped on a video call to talk about doing the podcast. One of the things that you really wanted to talk about and something you're really proud about was growing the business and getting it up to 15 heads. Now,
Yeah.
I work with a lot of recruitment businesses that, they get to that 5 head mark or 3 head mark. And then getting to that next level is really, really challenging. And I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast right now that maybe are in that situation or maybe reflecting on we were in that situation, maybe they could learn some things from what you've done. But it'd be really good to hear, the story, kind of where it started and how you got to, that 15 head mark now.
Yeah, of course. So I guess the best place to start is that I didn't actually leave my corporate organization to set up Mixxos. I actually set up another recruitment business for 2.5 years with my, at the time, regional director. And we did really well, far exceeded my own expectations, but it was very much a lifestyle business. And 2.5 years in, my now business partner, Chris, had set up his business. And we were like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this separately? It makes zero sense. I don't know if you know, but we're life partners and we both co-own Mixxos Group. So he joked about a few times. Everyone always says that. Well, okay. Well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Chris likes to say his line is, I'm actually not the boss of anything at home or at work, but it's not entirely true. It's definitely a 50-50. But for me, it was like a massive risk because I had spent 2.5 years building from scratch. And when I say building, like back pre-COVID, it was literally phone bashing, door knocking, and getting yourself in front of the right people that make the decisions. Okay. So for me, it was like, I know that we could be incredible together and we're both hugely ambitious, but equally I was walking away from a lot. So I sold my shares, I stepped down from my directorship, left very amicably, which is super unheard of in the world of business. And to this day, my old business partner is still one of my top 5 people in my life. So I really I'm really proud of that kind of going gracefully. So Chris and I joined forces in 2020, enter the COVID year, which was a bit mental. But again, for us, it was really important to just make sure that we didn't, and I said this in the 1% little snippet that we did at the RSC at the Rec Expo, was that it's so important to stand your ground, and the values that are instilled in you, don't deviate away from that for anything, for a quick win, for a quick buck. Try not to lower your fees, lower your standards. And so we've stood by that throughout what is quite possibly the most painful 2 years that I've ever been in business. And I think that has told, that's a story transpires. That's been incredible. We had to lay off Chris's brother, which is one of the hardest things you probably have ever had to do. Or Chris, we've had to lay off his old boss, who were both in the business before I joined. We had to get a bounce back loan. It was like mad. We didn't pay ourselves for a good 18 months. So but both of us come from backgrounds where and this is Matt, I'm going to talk about this very shortly, but grit, like how the
Yeah.
fuck do you define grit? And I
Mm.
know that Chris and I have it in abundance, and it comes from our youth. And, he was in competitive sport. I did singing, dancing, and acting, both
Mm.
very brutal industries to be in. And can be your face don't fit. It's entirely down to you. But ultimately, you got to
Mm.
pick yourself back up and go again every time you get
Mm.
hit down. And so for us, it was a no-brainer, and we started to drive their business forward. I think going from 0 to 15 has had its trials and tribulations. I know it sounds mental, but we are top recruiters, but trying to
Mm.
get it right internally in the beginning was one of the hardest things, I would say, in the growth of our business, because we led with our heart. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are in their infancy and starting up a business, recruitment business right now, would probably think that does resonate with me, because you think everyone's the same as you. You think everyone should want it as much as you. They should be as ambitious and as
Mm.
passionate as you. They should go the extra mile. Why are they leaving at 5 o'clock on the dot? And it was like, why? What are we doing wrong? Why? Like, people sit in the interview and say all of these things, but really when the chips are down, who's rolling up their sleeves? Who's
Mm.
actually doing that? And I think things have changed so much. So when I first got in recruitment, it literally was like that. That was the industry. But right now, it's more about kind of, what can you give me? What can you give me
Mm.
back as an employer? And in the beginning, we made a few bum hires, and that is entirely our fault. And
Mm.
I'll massively take that on the chin, and can look in the mirror and say, like, I've had a massive learn from all of those. You lead with your heart. There was a couple in there that had previous recruitment experience. So you think, wow, like, this is the aggressiveness in us. Yes, take a few
Mm.
people from competition, and we're going to get to where we want to get sooner. And then we stripped it right back after a couple of risky moves. We stripped it
Mm.
right back, got back to basics, and then we started to mold and home grow our own talent. And we
Mm.
built the strongest foundation ever. Our first kind of 2 to 3 hires absolutely walk, sleep, live, and breathe Mixxos. They are unbelievable. They don't know anything else. They
Mm.
don't. So what you and I would know as kind of pre-COVID recruitment industry, they don't have all of those kind of
Mm.
the bad traits instilled in them. So that is, you can't unprogram
Mm.
somebody. You can't reprogram somebody that's wired out like that already. I think that's what we were struggling with. If people were coming in
Mm.
and kind of just hoping that they could wing it through. So higher 2 to 10 was the hardest. Getting over 10, I
Mm.
think was cool, but getting up to 10,
Mm.
Jesus, it was one step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
But I'd say honestly, the best learning curve was, strip it back, stop leading with your heart, and make
Mm.
decisions based on having the right people in the right seats. There's been hires that we've made that have been unreal for our business, but still haven't been in the right seat. So it's like,
Mm.
what does that look like? How can we get the best out of that person? And just make sure that they are still feeling valued and they're still growing in
Mm.
their role. I'd say shuffle forward 4 years. In the last year to 18 months, we've made some significantly game-changing hires. We took on a new CFO, Michael Sterling. He is incredibly thought of in the recruitment industry. He worked on the James Calm portfolio, so he knows his stuff, and he's
Mm.
great for Chris and I, because we're both kind of still young enough in business we're very creative, we're very innovative,
Mm.
we're also very just mad energy. And he's like, whoa, he kind of
Mm.
brings us back down to earth, and he's like, well, have you thought about this, and what's your return on investment, and X
Mm.
and Y and Z. And he, to the penny, will work out what a hire is going to cost versus what they should really be bringing in for the business. Don't get me wrong, Chris and I were not stupid. We had a level head in terms of what we
Mm.
think that should look like, but the guy is like, he's drilled. So he
Mm.
came in and made some game-changing moves for us, and that almost nudged us when we were hiring, and don't keep leading with your heart. Just because you really like someone
Yeah.
doesn't mean you should hire them, right?
Yeah, there's something just before you carry on. Sorry to interrupt you. There's something I want to pick on what you just said about leading with your heart, because I've worked
Uh-huh.
in businesses as an employee, and I work with companies now externally where
Uh-huh.
I've spotted decision makers, like founders and owners of businesses that do lead with their heart. And I've been that person, because I'm quite an empathetic person. I see someone and, maybe they've had like a difficult upbringing, or, they've
Yeah.
got a poorly parent or something, and you're like, just want to give them a chance, but they're
Hmm.
not working out. And, sometimes I've worked in businesses where they've had like a process in place, like a policy that, if you don't bill a certain amount, you go on a performance plan,
Yeah.
and, you manage that person out if it's not working out. But, there's probably people listening to this right now that, probably do lead with their heart, probably are a little bit nicer, which, by the way, people, there are really nice people in recruitment. I work with quite a few people these days that are
Yeah.
really, really nice. But do you know what? Sometimes that's to their detriment. So I'm just
Mhm.
quite curious, like what advice, or what you did to transition, like any tangible things for people to take away, to transition away from, solely just leading with your heart and trying to use your head a little bit more.
Yeah, of course. So I once recruited for a huge client of mine in Milton Keynes, and
Mm.
their strap line literally was this. And you kind of could get away with this years ago. Is like, if I could see myself going down the pub for a beer,
The
I'll
beer
hire
fit, yeah.
them, right? I mean, it was a very male-dominated culture, but for me and Chris, it was like, if we can, and it literally was this, it was, if we can see that somebody has been through hardship, they have dealt with adversity,
Hmm.
they have, as we said in the beginning, they show grit, resilience,
Hmm.
determination, then they are a good fit for recruiters. And on paper, that is true. It doesn't
Mm.
matter where you schooled, it doesn't matter what grades you've got, it doesn't matter how you've been brought up. Ultimately, what matters is that you're able to twist and turn and you're agile enough.
Mm.
The values are so important because if you're given a set of values when you're young and you that kind of is ingrained in you, that's super
Mm.
hard to undo that. That's
Mm.
so hard to undo that. So for us, it wasn't necessarily about being experienced or going to a particular university or getting particular
Mm.
grades. It was more about those kind of the core values.
Mm.
And that's what led us, sadly, to some decisions that perhaps didn't work out quite well.
Yeah.
So what we had to do is get a blend of the two and
Mm.
just make sure that we were there's one thing that we've done is now there's a panel, and that sounds ridiculous, right? But there's three of us involved. So it's not like for me and Chris, it was either all or nothing, or it was a 50-50, and we'd talk it out and somehow we'd reach a decision. Now there's myself, Chris, and who I haven't mentioned yet, another great hire for us is our new operations director, Deb D. Cordova. She's got like 24
Mm.
years experience in the Milton Keynes recruitment market. So she's a different
Mm.
perspective on things as
Mhm.
well. So it's important that you have a panel of people, and before we pass any judgment, make any comments, we do a feedback mop-up session. We actually go into separate
Mm.
rooms and we go through the feedback with the
Okay.
candidate. Obviously, we streamlined our questioning before, genuinely. Like Chris and I are really good with our gut, and 9 times out of 10, I think most recruiters are like this, but you
Mm.
have an intuition. 9 times out of 10, the hires that didn't work out, I might have had a smidge of intuition that something
Mm.
weren't right. I couldn't quantify what, but that's kind of not good enough this day and age in recruitment. You
Mm.
need way more than that. And if a client ever says to me, we're not taking on such and such, I can't put my finger on it, but it just didn't
Mm.
feel right. You push back, don't you?
Yeah, of
So
course.
for us, it was about, okay, let's blueprint. What do our top performers look like? What is it that they've
Mm.
got? How do we ascertain that in an interview with a candidate? Because you can't just have it. Yes, it is important to have a chat and for people to feel their true selves and to
Mm.
come out of themselves. And that largely would be like the first stage with us, which would normally be done on Teams or over a telephone call. And then when they come in, it's a bit more professional and kind of more examples based.
Mm.
But again, if you were to say to me, what are the main things you look out for? Genuinely peel everything back. It is somebody that sees what good service looks like.
Mhm.
And if you've had someone that's got high standards, there are certain questions that we ask to find out how high their standards are,
Mm.
right? And I think something like that's already ingrained in someone. What good service looks like. Do they care? Are they a good person, or are they going to be a bit of a dick and someone that's going to ruffle feathers? Because that's no good for an organization that is small and aggressively growing. Culture is huge for us. It's massive.
Mm.
It's massive. Um, so I think having a different perspective and having a third person in the process is really, really helped. And for
Mm.
anyone out there that is currently a one-man band or just themselves and one other, it is good to try and get a different opinion
Yeah,
It's got to be
I
something
couldn't
more
agree with you more.
objective.
Yeah, I work with a one man band. He when I first started working with him, he'd set up the business like 4 weeks prior. So we sat
Hmm.
down and really mapped out what his vision was, his mission, his
Yeah.
values, the goals for the next 12 months to the next 5 years, etc. And he wanted to hire someone within his first 3 months.
Hmm.
He hired the person that was his resourcer in his old company on a short-term contract. Fantastic.
Hmm.
Started taking on a lot more work and was like, right, I need to take on another person, like a 360 to help drive more business.
Hmm.
And I said, right, can you just do me a favor? Whenever you have had that first stage, I want you to just pass their CV to me and I want you to just give me a bit of a debrief and I'll have a phone call with them. Like, I won't
Yeah.
charge you for it. I'll just have a phone call. It's part of the service I'll provide. I'll have a phone call or I'll jump on a video
Yeah.
call with them, get an email like this person's great, blah blah blah, and then I got on the coaching session with him, and I was like, "Is this someone that you can have a beer with?" He was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, 100%." I was like, "Right, if you couldn't go for a beer with them, would you hire them?" Hmm. I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, because like you're probably not aware, but that's like a bias that you have in your head. I done it when I
Yeah.
started hiring for people
Yeah.
on my team. I was like, this person likes martial arts. This person plays video games. This person likes personal development. He's my best friend. I'm going to hire him. Doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. And the first time I jumped on a call with someone, tested for the exact same things that you would around the grit and the
Hmm.
things that you've gone through didn't wasn't
Hmm.
really a good fit, and the second person literally was ideal. So I think what
Yeah.
you said there about having other people that aren't just like the manager or the founder of a business to
Yeah.
sense check that is such great advice. Another thing I want to ask you on that as well, because I think it's quite valuable,
Uh-huh.
because I think a lot of businesses go through this. You mentioned that there were certain people that you had that you kept on because your heart, you wanted to give them a chance, but then you had to
Mm.
kind of get rid of them, let them off, or whatever. So many businesses in recruitment go through this. What did you have like a specific process that you put in place early on, or did you develop a process down the line? Like I mentioned, some businesses have like, if you
Yeah.
don't bill for 2 quarters or whatever. What did that look
Mm.
like in back then?
Yeah, so for us, we held on to people way too long. I'm being really vulnerable now.
Mm,
Way too long.
mm,
Again, people, I believe in them. I don't want to let them down. Like, I don't want to fail
mm.
myself. But actually, we failed more by keeping them on because we were hemorrhaging money and
Yeah.
it's your reputation on the line ultimately. So, something that Michael said to me from the beginning, which stuck, Michael, our CFO, was that
Mm,
you can allow for a bad month, you can allow for 2 bad months. When you're getting into 3 bad months, it's kind of a bit of an issue, and
yeah.
you don't want to have a second bad quarter.
Mm,
And so this is just in the main with, and touch wood, we don't have anyone
mm,
on poor performance here. We have an incredible team that
mm,
are pretty much hitting or exceeding budget. Back then we were sitting on people and really wanting it for them more than they wanted it for themselves. I think with newbies in any role, whether they've
mm.
got experience or not, it can take it can take 6 months to really get
Yeah.
into their flow.
Hmm.
I think in your first 6 weeks. I think that's where you've just got to be really honest with each other. And that's where your
Yeah.
one-to-ones come into place. A lot of, again, young growing businesses, they probably see the value in one-to-one, but the minute
Mm,
you start shifting a one-to-one around, your team are like, okay, cool, well, it's not important. So therefore I'm going to shift things around,
mm,
or she's booked a one-to-one in for me and she keeps moving it. So
mm.
like she clearly doesn't value me. So it's just really, really important. And that's one thing I'd say, hand on heart, we're very good at doing here is like weekly check-ins, and then we do a
Mm.
monthly, like more of a kind of synopsis of their business
Yeah.
and where they're at. It's more little touch points on a weekly basis
Mm,
in a one-to-one manner.
mm.
So yeah, if you say to me, gun to my head now, how long would you give someone? I probably wouldn't exceed 6 months. But if I
Yeah.
knew within 6 weeks, if I knew that they weren't right, then you'd have to just start having the necessary conversations at that
Mm.
point.
Yeah, 100%. I think 6 weeks is, 6 weeks is enough time for you to really figure out whether someone's going to make it in this industry. If you've
Yeah.
interviewed them and you know that they've got some level of grit and stuff like that. And it really boils down to, and I'm sure you'll agree on this, is two things. It's either a skill issue or a will issue. If you
Yeah.
have documented that you have done your weekly one-to-ones, monthly business reviews, you've done tons of desk coaching, you've gone through some
Mhm.
standard theory stuff, so they know how to qualify a candidate, they know how to do a
Yeah.
cold call, an email marketing campaign, etc.
Uh-huh.
Then after like, 3 months and they've not billed still, and you go, right, this is everything we've gone through with you, and every single time we've caught up in our weekly catch-ups and our monthly business reviews, we've asked you, what do you need from us? What else can we do?
Mhm.
You haven't ever said you need more training because we've given you that.
Yeah.
Then it's a will issue, and sometimes
Hmm.
people take a little bit longer for it to click. I'm one of those people. It takes me a very long time for it to go click, and when it
Yeah.
does, I'm away. I'm just like, right, I
Yeah.
understand this now. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think everyone's so different. But there's some people I see. You go through that. We'll take candidate qualification as example. You go through
Hmm.
the open questions. You teach them how to dig into information. They're like, yeah, cool. They ace the role play, and they get out there, and they just
Hmm.
crumble. And you're
Yeah.
like, what the hell?
It's
Or
mad.
like what you said is like, you don't expect people to work the hours you do if it's your business, but they're
Mm.
underperforming, and then it's 5 o'clock, and so what are you up to tonight? Nothing much, just gonna go home and chill. And you're like, right, you've not done any billings. You've got no, it's not
Yeah.
like you're going to
Yeah.
see your family, it's your mum's
Yeah.
birthday. Like you've got jobs on your desk that are unfilled and you're just leaving.
100%.
Like that's not the mindset for this
It
industry.
doesn't
Like
make
you can
sense.
earn so
Yeah.
much more money doing less hours somewhere else if you want.
Yeah.
Just
100%.
mental.
This is not an industry for the faint-hearted. And one thing I will stand by, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that if you want a mediocre role, recruitment is not that. I mean, it
Mm,
can be highly rewarding, but you have to put in the graft.
yeah.
It's not a case of, oh, you guys are cracking the whip and this and that. Like we don't, our expectations here are high. They are
Mm,
really high. I'm not talking traditional old school where you're chained to your desk, because we offer a massive amount of flexibility, right? And we just
mm,
had one of our star performers, she's just returned from mat leave. One has just gone on mat leave. We've
mm,
just made a couple of part-time hires. We're like super flexible in that
mm,
respect. We do work from home each week as well, which I know a
mhm,
lot of recruitment companies, but particularly like the high street agents. I'm not talking about the
mm.
tech, the London guys, that's the norm for them. But
Yeah.
when you talk about stripping it right back to the like your high street agencies, your kind of local,
Mm,
your Hertfordshire, your Bedfordshire, like they are
mm,
still doing 5 days in the
mm.
office.
Yeah.
And that's why they're losing good people.
Mm,
But like just touching on your initial question, I think the biggest turning point for us has been the last 3 to 4 hires. The first element was me and Chris stripping it back, laying the
mm,
foundations, blueprinting. So we have a process which is absolutely proven. Chris and I swear by it. It's why we left the corporate world. It's why we both set up individually in the first instance. And before we hired one singular person, it was important that we blueprinted all of that. So as we
mm,
expanded, it wasn't diluted. And then we just become like every other. We spent a lot of time working hard on that blueprint and kind of segmenting our delivery and making sure that we were detaching from the normal high street agencies. And with premium service does come premium pricing. So when I
mm,
joined in 2020, so Chris set it up in 2018, I joined in 2020. The first thing we did was ripped apart our T's and C's,
mm,
minimized our payment terms by 50%. I think we were working at like 30-day payment terms, and we got it down to
mm.
between 7 and 14, depending on the client. Obviously, your temp contracts sometimes demand a lot
Yeah.
more than that. But it was
Mm,
like a non-negotiable for us. We looked at all of our fees and reviewed them. And where you were getting a lot of our, at the time, competition were slashing and doing like temp to perm free deals, or
mm,
bringing their fees right down to 10%. We just weren't willing. We would rather have a handful of clients and ride out COVID than do that and then never be able to return to what we know
mm,
what our worth is and our value. So that was the very first part of the growth strategy, was make sure that how we want this operation to grow is
mm,
blueprinted so that it becomes a non-negotiable in the early stage training with the guys. And so our last 4 hires have been all experience. So we've got Deb, our operations director,
mm,
unreal hire for us. We've had 2 perms consultants come on board who are
mm.
also super experienced. I think collectively they've got about 50 years worth of experience. That's not
Oh,
including myself,
wow.
Chris, and CFO. Yeah, so we've kind of grown out our senior leadership team, and we made 2 really strong hires on the perm division. So yeah, it's been a journey and it hasn't always been smooth. It's probably
Mm.
been the biggest drawback to our growth, has been making, ironically, we're a recruitment business, but it has been making really good hires for our team. People
Mm,
that care. If you ask
mm,
me to quantify in one word, skill aside, background aside, it is people that genuinely care.
mm. I'm so glad that you said that. And a lot of the people that I have spoken to, and some people might say, oh, it's so cringy, but I'm a believer in the law of attraction. I believe whatever you put out there, you attract. And lo and behold,
Uh-huh.
every client I've worked with this year, every single person that's been on the podcast, very similar in terms of values and in terms of how they want to operate in this industry. But
Uh-huh.
there is a lot of recruitment businesses out there, and I had this conversation with someone the other day, that, can you still be a successful recruitment business in 2025, or 2024? This will be out in 2025, by doing the old school recruitment tactics, ghosting
Hmm.
candidates, being a bit of an arsehole, but just purely chasing the money. I sit down
Hmm.
and I meet some outrageous top billers, but with respect, some of them aren't really the nicest people in the world. They don't really care about people. They just want to earn money. And I
Hmm.
think, look, if you're a business owner and that's all right. That's just kind of how you want to run your business. Fair. Not really how I want to work or the types of businesses I want to work with, but
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer that, these days you really can build a business on kindness
Yeah.
and compassion. You really can.
The crazy thing is with social media and reviews and stuff like that, I don't think it's possible to grow a successful, it's not sustainable. Okay, you
Yeah.
might get a quick acceleration and do okay, but you'll get found out.
Yeah.
You'll be exposed. Clients, the expectation from clients and candidates over the last 4 years is so much greater. When I first got
Mm,
into the industry in 2007, I think it was 2009, somewhere
mm,
around then, we were actually in a recession. But life was so easy. Recruitment
mm,
was so easy. You had your little book, you had your Yellow Pages directory, you had your
mm,
candidate cards, and out you went, and it was mental. But like everything has changed so much. You can't. I interviewed someone recently, and they, in their heyday, were a top performer,
mm,
good on the eye, like just good personality. But when you drill into the detail and there's no
mm,
substance there, no, it doesn't wash. And I think that
mm,
is going back to your question a moment ago. That's probably one of the things that we've got a lot better at because it's not
mm.
just about the fluff. The clients want
Yeah.
way much more than that. And also, there are no two clients ever the same. So clients that like a little bit of a chin wag about their
Yeah.
weekend, there's a place for that. There are clients
Mm,
that just want the extra touches and they want you to do all of the donkey work with the recruiting. There are clients that want all of the value adds and they want the events and stuff, which I'll come on to shortly.
mm,
But all of those things that really do set us apart from the norm, because you can just use a
mm.
CV service these days. You can use a CV service.
Yeah.
AI is ever evolving. So we
Hmm.
need to prove that I'm proud of working in this industry. And I know there will always be a place for humans, but you need to kind of earn your stripes and know your worth. And that isn't in the CV. So, it's not really finding the candidates now. It's not really presenting them. It's
Mm,
all of the added touches. It's all of the relationship building. It's being where your clients are. And that
mm.
is obviously social media is a massive, massive growth
Huge.
strategy for us. But networking events, so underrated,
Mm,
so
mm,
underrated. And actually, if you were to ask probably 9 in every 10 recruitment consultants, you think they're extroverts, you think it would be a doddle for them, but actually most of them are a bit like cringe. I don't want to walk into a networking event on my own. I ain't going up to someone that I don't know and chatting
yeah.
waffle and trying to strike up a conversation. And I actually don't really care. But you need to be in. I was taught when I was young, really young, be interested and be interesting. People will
Mm.
see that a mile. If you're not, and if you're fake, people see that a mile. And going back to what you said a minute ago about these people that don't care and they're in it for a quick buck, that's short lived.
Mm. No,
That's
you
not
said that.
long-term
Yeah.
relationships.
You've said that absolutely perfectly. And I worked for a business, two businesses that were polar opposites, one of which was targeting you on going out to those conferences, learning about the products
Uh-huh.
within your market, flying overseas to go and do client meetings for clients that you've just agreed terms with or that you want to agree
Mm,
terms with, like having that face-to-face handshake to go, right, let's do the terms
yeah,
negotiation
man,
in person,
valuable.
sorry. And I've worked with a business that thought face-to-face meetings were a waste of time, that they thought that exhibitions, except for the big one that happens once a year, were a waste of
Yeah.
time. There's only five businesses there, but five of the companies that are exhibiting are my target clients. Like, let me go and meet them. Absolutely no point. You can do more
Yeah.
on the phone. And I think that's really short-lived. And the business that
It's
is,
efficiency, it's trading time for money, but they just don't see the
yeah,
bigger picture.
they don't see the bigger picture. They really don't. And that business, unfortunately, is not in a good place. And pretty much every single top biller, every single director has resigned from that business because, as I
Hmm.
mentioned to you, they don't have a set of values, which I know is something that's really, really important for you and a massive thing that you're massively passionate about.
Mhm.
So when I'm sat down and like, right, so we want this set of behaviors. Like, how does the business operate? What is the principles? What are the values? We don't have them. So if the
Yeah,
person's performing well, but they're a dick, what does a dick look like to you? Like, it's
yeah,
not written down here. It's really challenging. So
yeah.
yeah, so for me, like whenever, when I set my business up, I said this to my wife because I've had some challenging experiences with some challenging businesses as an employee. And I said, I'm going to be
Mm.
really picky. And if it means that I don't earn a lot of money in year one, which touch wood, I've done all right this year, but I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to work with people that I really believe in, with businesses that I believe in, because I just don't want to go and teach people how to do recruitment and do some coaching when they're completely against what I believe in. I
Yeah.
just don't feel like that's a very moral thing to do. I just don't think I'd
Mhm.
be able to do that, to be honest.
No, it sounds like you're doing amazing as well with the head start that you've had to be as successful as you are in the last year whilst doing the podcast as well, which, as you said, you didn't have an ROI on that. That's just because you're interested in people. You
Mm,
love hearing people's stories. You've got to a point now where you can't accept everyone that wants to be a guest on the podcast. So
yeah.
it's a great place to be in such a short space of time.
Yeah, and do you know what? I done a post today. So this episode for people, this we're doing this on the first Monday of December in 24. I done a post today, and I had to rewrite. Normally, I'm the type of person. I don't know if you're like this, but I'll do a post and I'll just go post, and I just won't look at it because I'm just like I could overanalyze it so many different ways, and I'm just like,
100%.
do you know what? Like, it's not the worst thing. It's just post it, and if you
Yeah.
get a few hundred impressions, few thousand impressions, happy days. Like, it's more of a consistency thing. I've done a post
Uh-huh.
today because literally a year ago from today was when I went live on LinkedIn and announced that I set my business up. Meanwhile, I was currently in Heathrow Airport on my way to my honeymoon for 2 weeks. So I'm just about to set up a business after being, I was like had to go through a month of my notice period where I wasn't allowed to work with anyone or anything like that. And then on day
Uh-huh.
one of setting up the business, I'm going away to Thailand for 2 weeks. And I sat down with another coach, and he said to me, do me a favor, don't go on LinkedIn, don't check your emails, don't do anything in that 2 weeks. I want you to just be present with your wife. You only have one honeymoon, hopefully. I want you to be present, and I want you to do me a favor. When you're in Thailand, I want you to look around at everything, and rather than think, oh, this is amazing now, I want you to think this is
Mm.
amazing. I'm going to be doing this more. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that's quite an interesting mentality. And he said, because what you're about to embark on, you'll earn way more money than when you're just a recruiter working for someone else. And you'll have
Mhm.
a load more flexibility. You won't have some bullshit annual leave policy. You'll be able to take your wife away willy-nilly when you want.
Mhm.
Like, you went to Dubai, you just went, boom, a couple of weeks, I'm going to go do a bit of reset, right? So I was like, cool. So that whole 2 weeks, I was like, oh my God, yeah, this is it. Like, I
Yeah.
could see myself
Yeah.
doing this more often. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I have no clients. I don't work for a business where all the directors are working for, there's no one that's giving me any handy downs. There's
Yeah.
nothing that I can go, oh, loads of people work for S3, so they'll give
Yeah.
me some jobs. Like, I didn't have any of that. I had
I
no
love that.
pipeline. I hadn't been posting on LinkedIn for 2 years because I was an L&D manager. What's the point in posting on LinkedIn?
Hmm.
So yeah, when I'd done that post today, I had to rewrite the last part of the post because it said, I know it's like in the UK, it's seen as cringeworthy for giving yourself a pat on the back, but I'm fucking proud of what I've done this year because it's
And
literally been
so you
all off
should
my
be.
back. Yeah, it's
And so
literally
you should be.
everything by myself.
The mad thing is, Charles, when you live in the US, they love that shit. This is why I love the Americans so much. They're so, like, literally, they are the biggest own cheerleaders. They love it.
Yeah.
They are like, so now I'm like, I'm going to be my own hype girl, and it cringes Chris out. He's typical British. He's like, say, she's on LinkedIn again. Why not? I made a commitment six months ago to drive our exposure hand
Mm,
in hand with our rebrand, actually, because we rebranded back in May. And I
mm,
made a commitment that I was going to drive that forward. And there are, like you, days when I make videos and I don't want to do it. I do not
mm,
want to get on camera. I have something to share and I want to share it, but I don't always feel like I want to do it. Okay. So I
mm.
don't always feel motivated, but I'm always disciplined. And the
Yeah.
first thing that I learned really quickly within the first few weeks was do not watch it back because you will overanalyze yourself 10, 20, 30 times
Hmm.
over. Do it, be confident, send it. What's the worst that can happen? Post it, send it, and just get the fuck on with it
Mm.
because you're doing a whole lot more than most people on LinkedIn are doing. And I
That,
think
yeah.
the first few months were like painful. When a personal branding expert said to me, this is what you need to be doing, I was like, get to fuck. Recruiters don't do this shit. Everyone hates recruiters. No one's going to want to hear what I've got to say. This is not going to work. It's a service. It's not a product we've got. It's not like I'm getting on there. I'm not a gym expert. It's not fitness. It's not beauty. Who the hell's going to want to hear this? But in time, 6 months, and it's just literally been like a dominoes effect. We've won 2 mega clients off the back of it. 2 of our hires from our industry, from the recruitment industry, have come off the back of it. So rather than us going out there and hammering people's inboxes like most recruiters or having to rely on a rec to rec, people are now starting to come to us to say, like, I'm hearing the noise you're creating. I love it. You know, you guys are very bold. And it isn't until, obviously, we're going to talk about standards in a little while, but it wasn't until we'd started to make some experienced hires did we actually realize, Chris and I just take it for granted. Our expectations are up here, our standards are up here. It's just the norm for us. And they come in and they're like, wow, just wow, because everyone says they're different in recruitment. Everyone does it. This is so eye-opening. Now we understand why you guys were like mopping up all of the business locally. It's really funny. Our ops director was like, heard of you guys, and I thought you're just going to go away. So I was like, no. Then 4 years later, boom. Don't get me wrong, we've got a long way to go, an awfully long way to go, but it's going in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, nice. There's one thing I want to ask you just about this, because we could sit here and talk about personal branding all day, but there's one question I'll ask you, and then there's a few things that we need to get to. But before I do ask you the question, I think for people listening, because there's so many people in recruitment that had that mindset that you did when it comes to personal branding, it does take at least, I'd say, 6 months or so of being very consistent and being really, really disciplined. And I met an old colleague for a beer a few weeks ago, and he said, you know, I look at your LinkedIn, you look like the most successful person in the world, but I know that LinkedIn, you know, it's social media at the end of the day. That's probably not how it is. And I was like, if you think my life is just sunshine and rainbows, mate, like, no, like being self-employed, doing my own thing. And like, if I, you know, God forbid, fall out a window and like hurt, like break my neck, the mortgage probably won't get paid. I've got savings for a while, but do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not able to earn money at the moment because of that. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. But what I will say is that there hasn't necessarily been a specific post for me that has generated loads of business, but there's been a few things where people have DM'd me saying, I've seen that you've been posting about this really consistently, really like your messaging. And then you go, oh, I appreciate that. You spark up a conversation because should we just jump on a Zoom, just get to know each other? Like, I'm not going to sell you anything. We'll just get to know each other. Next thing you know, you both get along, you're both aligned, and you're like, oh, hang on, actually, this is someone that I could work with. Or like, for example, the podcast. Like, everyone knows a podcast is possibly the best lead generation tool, but it's not for everyone because it's a lot of hard work, a lot of hours that you need to put into it. But literally this month, well, in November, I got 2 clients off the back of it that are going to be working with me on a 90-day sprint in January. I've already done work with them this year already. That's tens and tens of thousands of pounds off of the back of, hey, I saw you subscribe to the newsletter. Yeah, I've been following you since episode 1. Or, hey, do you want to be a guest on the episode on the podcast? Sure, I'll be a guest. Was a guest. Shit, didn't even actually speak to you about what your actual business is. What do you do? Yeah, cool, let's work together. It's just that consistency of the personal branding.
And you know, Charles, there will be people that are watching you and seeing everything you're doing, and they're probably your cheerleaders, but they don't actually make it known. They're called lurkers. This is so funny, but I remember someone telling me about this 12 months ago. You get your lurkers. Those 2 clients that I'm telling you have just come off are lurkers. And I wouldn't have even known. The job got called in, and it wasn't until I then spoke to the CEO, and he's like, oh, it was me that told my ops director to come to you guys with a new job. And now, you know, we're doing loads of recruitment for them. So it's just so powerful, And I think you could cringe and you could like overanalyze everything you do all day long and not do it. What's the point in that? You may as well just get it out there. If you feel like you've got something to share, and you're clearly very likable as well. You know, people want to stop and listen to you. But it's getting the balance right, isn't it? It's like the podcasts take time. The events that we host for our clients are face-to-face in-person events. They take a lot of time. And for any of the listeners out there that saw me chuckle when you said about going to Dubai, that not in a flash way, I was due to get on here with you, weren't I, Charles, last week? And I had to take a last minute, move all of my meetings. I cancelled all of my meetings and moved them. It's the first time I think I've ever done it in business, because I've always been an old school traditionalist in that I can't believe that person's cancelled on me. What a swat! Like, never, you don't ever do that in business, and that's
in fairness, that's I understand why you say that, because most people will just email me or just message and say, I'm
Mhm.
sure you'll understand. I've got a lot on. I'm going to take a few weeks off. You
Yeah.
DM'd me and I
I was
thought,
literally like, I'll get on, but I
yeah,
don't
I'm not gonna
particularly want to
lie.
get on.
When you messaged me, you said like, I need to speak to you about something. I thought you were gonna say, oh, I saw your post and like people have been saying this about you. I started to get like paranoid, like what the fuck? Because whenever my mum would message me, she would go, "Can I speak to you?" It's always bad news. Like your brother's been in
Yeah.
hospital. Oh, I've got to go to have a scan. I might have cancer. It's always fucking bad. And then I get on the phone and you're
Interesting.
like, oh, I've been so like crazy with work, blah blah. I need to take some time off. I was like, mate, that's absolutely fine. Like, do your thing. It's absolutely fine. But I
No, but
really
again,
did
it's
appreciate it. I did.
I'd never deliver that kind of news ever any other way than face to face or on the
Mm,
phone, firstly. And secondly, it's quite vulnerable for me to say that. I think a lot of people would have maybe skirted over it, but like genuinely, you will know this being an entrepreneur, being a business leader, growing,
mm.
you're so invested, it's your passion, it's your like baby as such. And I just needed to take it. It's only 4 days, but I needed it. And now I'm like reset and I'm ready to go close out the year,
Yeah.
ready to like smash into 2025. And I really
Mm.
appreciate you being flexible. So
Yeah, no worries. Well, the question I
good.
did want to ask you, and it just so we wrap
Yeah.
up on the personal branding piece. Obviously, you work with a
Uh-huh.
personal branding expert, and I'm not necessarily asking you to share all the absolute secrets, but I've followed quite a few personal branding people, and when Hisham first left Hoxo, he had a Zoo's branding or whatever, and he done a workshop, and he talked about some like principles for building your personal brand. So what was like your key takeaway? So for people listening to this that are maybe starting to do some posting or building their
Uh-huh.
brand via LinkedIn and things like that, what were some like key sort of tangible takeaways that you took away from working with that expert?
Um, just quickly for the record, I don't work with a personal branding expert. Chris and I had a call with someone, and he came in and did a bit of a discovery session with
Hmm.
us about a year ago now, and it was like a one-off session. And we chose
Mm,
to bring someone in-house part-time, 2 days a week, and just create some content. So one thing I'd firstly like to acknowledge and kind of put out there is that there's
mm,
no quick road to success, and it is all on you. You can't get someone to do your shit for you because it's not
hmm.
authentic. And you can clearly see if it's
Yeah.
chat GPT copy and paste, or if someone else has written it for you. Like,
Yeah.
people know my personality now. When I walk into a room, they're like, oh my God, you are exactly like that person on LinkedIn.
Mm,
I've seen your stuff. You are exactly like that person. There's no hidden cracks or anything.
hmm.
But the valuable time that I spent with Dan from the Knowlton brothers, he said 3 things to me. You need to be interesting, you
Hmm.
need to be educational, and you need to be funny as fuck. Now, I'm still working on the funny bit, obviously.
Yeah.
Funny is all of the outtakes. Basically, Jenny, our
Yeah.
social media lady, she's got all of these outtakes, and I'm like, God, do you just sit there and have a laugh at me all day long? But it is like can be quite humiliating sometimes when you're creating stuff and you fluff your words up and everything.
God, yeah.
Those are the 3 things that he said. Consistency
Mm,
is everything. So if you're going to post 3 times a week, do it 3 times a week for the whole year. Don't dip
mm,
in and dip out. Don't say you're going to do 5 times a week and set yourself up to fail. If you only got a capacity to do two, do two. But just
mm,
make sure you consistently do two. Um, have a blend, because not everyone is a reader. Like
hmm,
text posts notoriously do a lot better on LinkedIn as a
hmm,
platform. It's good to have video in there and visual, and I think we're
hmm.
moving more into the kind of video space. And then obviously like polls seem to work really well, or static
Mm.
photos. I've forgotten the phrase that they use. What is it, like the gorilla pose? Where you just kind of like pretend you're like looking out to
Oh, right, yeah.
like looking out. You're in
Oh,
a
there's
coffee shop and
candid
you're looking at a
photos.
moment of yeah, like the candid ones. Um, so, but yeah, what else did he tell me that's really useful to share? Don't make sure you follow up. So if you are
Oh,
putting
yeah.
good content out there and people are taking the time to like and engage,
Yeah,
what freaking use is that unless you actually follow up?
I know.
You've got to
Yeah.
follow up with people that are taking an interest in you. He told me about the lurkers as well. I'll never forget. Dan was like, look, it's not about likes, it's not about comments. Ideally, yeah, you do want to grow your following.
Mm,
That's the impressions that are most important.
mm.
And I think when I started out, my impressions have grown probably by about 400% since I
Oh,
started out.
wow.
That's 6 months of consistency though.
Mm, yeah.
And when I say consistency, so if I have been on holiday, I do make sure that all of my posts are pretty much scheduled, but they're never more than a week in advance, because it's got to be
Mm,
relevant, like topical, current kind
Yeah.
of content you're putting out there. Um, so yeah, I think those are kind of really the most important things, and make sure you
Mm.
engage with people within the first hour. Obviously, the worst thing you can do is try and get back to everyone all day because you become a busy fool. Like if I picked up
Yeah.
my phone every time it went off, I would never get anything done. But the first hour I block out when a post goes out just to make sure that I am engaging.
Yeah.
Because the more conversation you create on a post, the better that is for the impressions, and the
Yeah.
algorithm picks up this doing well and will push it
Mm.
out there. I'm by no means an expert and I'm literally just a beginner at this, but I kind of know the fundamentals of what theoretically should work.
Mm. Well,
But
think
honestly,
about it.
it's consistency.
Yeah, think about it like this, right? Think about if you and I decided to go to a gym together and we wanted to either put on muscle mass, lose some weight, one of the standard ones that people would join a gym, right? In 6 months, we could just find a standard plan online. And if both of us went to the gym and lifted weights 3 days a week, did cardio 1 day a week, and then
Mm.
stuck to a roughly sort of general disciplined diet and were consistent for 6 months, I can
Mhm.
almost guarantee you in 6 months you'll see some decent results, unless you're not being disciplined and you're getting on the piss and binge drinking tons on the weekend, or you're eating
Yeah.
KFC and not going to the gym and playing PlayStation like I would instead of going and doing a workout in the garden or something. So yeah, you don't necessarily need to be a personal branding expert. I think there's value in working with those types of experts if you're completely a novice. But I think the advice you
Mm.
gave there is similar to what I would say to people is just figure out what your market is, offer value to your market, be
Yeah.
like what you said, be interested and interesting with the type of content. Don't make it overly wordy or whatever, and just
Yep.
try it 3 days a week. And the thing is like you can easily tell because of the analytics. You can look back and go, hang on a minute, that post really underperformed. I thought that was a good post. And then you look back and
Yeah.
it's just a huge chunk of text with no questions.
Mhm.
You're like, huh. And then the next one is just a simple question, a couple of bullet points, and a cool picture. And you're like, oh, that
No.
one's done really well. So it's a case of just
Yeah.
learning from your
Trial and
mistakes and
error. Yeah, I think
yeah.
it is really good to look into the detail, and the analytics are really important, but I'm not an expert. The most
Mm,
important thing is just get it out there, trial it,
yeah.
and see how it works. And like the team here, we still do traditional means of BD,
Hmm.
but not like when I started out in recruitment. Phone
Mm,
bashing days
yeah,
are long gone. But guarantee any new client they ever sit in front of, they're like, "Oh, have you heard about Mixxos before?" Up until 6 months ago, they're like, no, not really.
mm,
Now they're like, oh yeah, I see that Gemma doing, prancing about and being
yeah.
twat basically on LinkedIn, but it works. Do you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
works. And
that's it.
they come back to the office buzzing because their work's already done. Like the trust has already been built. It is insane
Mm,
how you can build trust by human to human, seeing you, watching you move, watching your journey, maybe not even saying or commenting, but they're clearly tuning in and it's clearly hitting some sort of spot with them.
mm. The
And
last thing I'll
then,
say on this, before I move on to the other thing,
yeah.
it's exactly what you just said. I was working with this recruitment business a few months ago, and they were all so skeptical about doing the personal branding, and I don't really use social media. It's really cringe. It's like, look at my Instagram. The last time I posted on Instagram was like 5 months ago. I don't really post on
Yeah.
Instagram. I occasionally put a silly thing on a story, like that's
Mm.
whatever. But LinkedIn for me is it's a money-making social media thing. You're a recruiter. Like 90% of the people on the industry on the platform are recruiters. Like you doing that is just going to make your
Mhm.
life a lot easier. And then slowly but surely, everything that I've been doing from the start of the year has started to pay dividends. Came into the office and I was like, I actually wasn't working with them that day. I decided to work in their office to just do business development myself. And I said, look at my
Mhm.
diary, and I showed them. I had like 10 client calls booked in,
No
all
way.
cold calls, right? They were cold
Yeah.
calls, but they'd all been people that have engaged with my content, subscribed to the newsletter, or had been referred by
Uh-huh.
someone that's seen my stuff on LinkedIn. I was like, I haven't made a fucking cold call in 6 months because every single time, even if I do call them out the blue and I'm like, oh, hi, it's Charles Kiriaki here. It's like, oh, you're right, mate. Yeah. How do I know you? You're the guy that does the thing, right? It just makes your life so much easier, is what I'll say
Yeah,
to
you're
people. Yeah,
creating
we could.
awareness, aren't you?
Exactly. We could chat about that for ages, but there's something that obviously before we wrap up, there's two things that I think merge in really, really well together.
Mm.
You talked about when we jumped on a call a few weeks back about getting from that 200K to that 2 million part. And
Mhm.
obviously you're so passionate about driving standards, living by your values, your mission. I think those two really interlink. And a
Yeah.
few businesses that I've been speaking to recently, I've been asking them the question, what are your standards? Like, what does
Hmm.
good look like, and what does not good look like? Like, how do you know
Hmm.
that is not the high standards that you hold yourself to? And if they are those low standards, then obviously that's we look into a process to kind of move those people out, etc. So yeah, talk us
Hmm.
through like that transition from that 200K to getting to 2 million turnover, and how that kind of, how you built that in with the standards that you've created at Mixxos.
Sure. So in terms of standards, I would say for me and Chris, we sweat the small stuff.
Hmm.
We are obsessed with the detail and always have been, to the
Mm.
point where a lot of people be like, oh, don't worry about that. But for us, if we say we're going to do something, we do it. If you say you're going to call a candidate back at this time, just fucking do it.
Mm.
Don't make an excuse up. If a candidate calls for you, don't tell your colleague you're on the other line. Take the goddamn call. You're
Yeah.
not on the other line.
Hmm.
And service is one of those things you can't taste it, you can't touch it. It's a feeling. And you are only as good as that last impression you've left on someone, be it a candidate, be it a client, be it an employee,
Mm.
someone that we've taken on, even the people that haven't worked out well here. We've had really good splits with them, you know? So
Mm.
it's about making a good impression and doing the right thing. And like the detail and the small stuff that most people would overlook are the most important things. They're the game changing
Mm.
things. And being able to take risks as well was something that within the first year, I needed to become comfortable with. And then that has a ricochet effect throughout your business. So we try our best to empower everyone here to be bold, brave, make decisions.
Mm.
Fuck up. You got to take
Mm.
risks. And that's the only way that you're going to learn. Every time you fail, you get one step closer to success, but you have to lead from the front. So it's something that Chris and
Yeah.
I absolutely bang on about all the time. Um, yeah, it's a massive milestone. Getting to your first million is like, wow.
Mm.
One thing that I would say is great about Chris and I, but also not so great, is that we don't celebrate enough.
Mm.
Because our standards and expectations are so high, naturally that then can play out in a way that we almost don't celebrate things and maybe
Mm.
don't see what we've achieved and look back. And it's important that when you're leading a team of people that want to feel valued and things, it's important that you are recognizing what you've done and how great you have been,
Mm.
despite all of the failures and stuff like that along the way. So it's like, yeah, we got to a million and we're like, what's next? What's next? So
Yeah.
we're now at 2.5 million, like, you know, and the trajectory is wild. It's
Yeah.
absolutely out of this world. And we have 100% got the right foundations in place now. We've got mega offices here. Like, we're not going to get rid of them. We're not going to go remote working because our people like the
Mm.
base and having that camaraderie and kind of working together. In terms of standards, non-negotiables, we'd never ever take on a job without meeting with the client, ever, ever.
I love that.
9 times out of 10, it has to be face to face.
Mm.
Very, very small exception, it will be in this manner on a video call, but ultimately we
Mm.
want to go down on site when we take on a new job. If it's a client that we've been working with for a really, really long time, fine, but we still want to do a full job briefing.
Yeah.
Our job brief is like there's no stone left unturned. We want to know the ins and outs of a duck's arse. Don't just send us a job description over and say, go find me some candidates, because we're not the right partner for you.
Yeah.
And we're not afraid to say that. You know, there have been occasions where clients are like, tell me fees, here's a job spec, send me your best CVs over by tomorrow.
Mm.
No, that's not quite how it works this day and age. Like,
Mm.
you want CVs tomorrow, go find yourself a CV service, because we probably take a little bit longer than others, but know that the quality is up here, is unmatched.
Mm.
So the rigorous processes behind the scenes I mentioned to you that we blueprint is like a 3-step process that we do not deviate from.
Mm.
So in actual fact, when we launched our industrial and warehouse desk on the temp side, being really brutally honest, 4 years ago, I would never have entertained that. And even Chris said, why would we entertain that kind of business? Like, we're doing so well with our premium head office and
Mm.
commercial stuff, but we've airdropped our process so that there's all of the issues and the problems that normally arise in that kind of account, they don't
Mm.
arise so much, because we are making sure that we're doing these fundamental steps behind the scene to make sure that you're not putting but it's not a bum on a seat service that
Yeah.
we offer. Hence, that's
Mm.
reflected in kind of the fee that we charge.
Mm.
In terms of like in here, for our staff in here, it's just having people that will go the extra mile, but you know, people that can see past the no's and the can'ts.
Mm.
Like, it literally infuriates me if I ask someone to do something and they say, no, I can't do that. Oh no, sorry, we don't do that here. And I'm like, find a fucking way. Because
Mm,
that's what we do here at Mixxos. If a client asks me to do something and I value that client and that partnership, if we don't do it, we will find a way of doing it. There's
mm,
always a way forward. And I think again that plays out in so me and Chris, if we go out for dinner, if we go to a
mhm,
hotel, it's like service has got to be up here, and that is exactly what we do. Live, sleep, breathe with Mixos, and all of
mm,
our people are exactly the same. Even if they're unsure, they'll come to us and say, "Oh, such and such wants so and so done. Could we look at that?" Absolutely.
mm,
Are they an exclusive partner? Then absolutely. And 99% of our partnerships are exclusive, which is one massive thing that I haven't mentioned to you, has been a huge part of our
mm,
um, success, is that we lock our clients in exclusively with a certain process. Again, to do that, it's tried, it's tested, it's proved it works.
mm,
Um, it's so powerful. So we're
mm,
not scrapping around in this kind of rat race that I certainly found myself in when I worked for a
mm.
corporate. Or why are you going to do all that work and put everything into a role to get nothing out of it? So then what happens is the reputation gets damaged of the recruiter, because they do put it down the bottom of the pecking order because they've got no
Yeah.
loyalty and nothing to come back on. Whereas you could have eliminated that in the beginning and locked in a relationship. Yes, it is uncomfortable for clients to entrust in you if they've never worked that way before. Try it. What's the worst that can happen?
Oh my God. I'm so glad that you said that because I get so frustrated when I see there's two things I get well, there's many things I get frustrated about recruitment
Let's not
processes.
start.
Yeah, I'll be here all day. But the two things that really frustrate me are when you see a recruiter like spec out an unbelievable profile, the client comes back and says, "Yeah, candidate's fantastic," and they go, "Cool, when can you interview them?" And I'm like, right, you've just led with that. You have no idea whether that's a right fit for the candidate. And I understand, there are nuances. There are certain markets that kind of
Mhm,
it can work in that sort of way. That's not how
mhm.
I've ever worked. Like if you like the look of my candidate, I need to jump on a call and meet you because
Yep.
I've got to do the right service for my candidate. If I meet you and you're a fucking see you next Tuesday, I don't want to put my candidate in front of you. And also, if you've got wildly outrageous expectations and you're going to dick us around, it's probably not worth anyone's time, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other thing is when I see recruiters do a job qualification and it's literally just take job order taking. The client takes over. I've seen it with my own eyes. Like when I used to do like video call coaching, I would be
Uh-huh.
behind the laptop so I'd hear the call and the recruiter can look over the monitor and see me and I'm kind of going like do you know what I mean? Or like
Yeah,
writing on a
yeah.
notebook and saying like dig or whatever. And I
Yeah.
had this one experience with a trainee recruiter.
Uh-huh.
And he said, basically, I've sent you the JD. So yeah, like that's it really. But yeah, let me just tell you what else I need, and then just started rolling off some different things, and then she's like, "Cool, all right," and I've just sat there like, "What?" And luckily, I built them a training handbook, so I just turned the training handbook around, and I'd like used like a highlighter, and he's gone through like two or three of the things, and I've just like go through that, take fucking charge of the conversation, like
Yeah. You have to
that's
take
what they're
control,
paying.
don't you?
Exactly, that's what they're paying you for. Like,
Yeah.
if like we use the example of a personal branding expert, right? If you and I that now just invested thousands to work with a personal branding expert and they didn't go through our content, analyze it and go, right, this is where you need to be doing better, it's a waste of
Mhm.
fucking time. Otherwise, I could
Yeah.
just go on Fiverr and get a bloody copywriter from overseas to just
100%.
make the content. So you need
Yeah.
to consult when you do the job spec. There was another thing that I was going to say that really bugs me. I think it's those two things. Yeah, but the last thing I'll say on that, people that run recruitment businesses, people that want to set up their own recruitment businesses, massively overcomplicate all the different processes that go into building a recruitment firm, the standards that they have and the processes, etc. If you can nail two, maybe three things, the two to three from my personal experience, and I would like to get your thoughts on this. If you can
Hmm.
nail a world-class candidate qualification with all the excellent questioning, world-class job qualification, and then world-class objection handling, everything else kind of goes in tandem with that. Terms of
Yeah.
negotiation, sourcing,
Yeah.
everything else kind of goes in tandem. If you can master those three
Mm.
and like, absolutely have a world-class process, if you want to set up the warehouse division like you did or an engineering division or whatever, if you've got those
Yeah.
three things there, boom.
100%. It's so, so imperative, isn't it? And people are like, oh, anyone could do recruitment. Well, anyone can they can take a bloody job briefing and throw a few CVs over. And that's why the industry's got such a bad name, is
Yep.
because of the people that do that. But there are enough people in our industry to start raising the standards together collectively. That is why Chris and I invested in becoming partners of the REC,
Mm,
because we're proud of the industry. We
Hmm.
want to raise the standards. We know that we have such a big impression that we make in the world of business that has a knock-on effect to our economy.
Hmm.
And we just want to give people the opportunity like us that kind of came from nothing. Like Chris and I wasn't particularly academic at school. I wasn't particularly interested. I'll tell the truth. I used to skip like my maths class and stuff and go and start singing with the piano. I was away with the fairies. I was a creative. I wanted to be on the stage. I wanted to be performing, and I just wasn't one for school. Then I left school and I got into stage school, and I absolutely loved it. I was thriving. It is dog eat dog, and I think that's where I got
Mm.
all of the like key skills that you would say are kind of make or break for a
Mm.
recruiter. And I think for us, we just wanted to give people that we've got a purpose. We want to give back to people. We want to see people going along the same journey as us and give them opportunity that might not have had
Mm.
elsewhere. Because you're labelled, aren't you? I think if you don't
Mm.
do particularly well at school, or if you don't go to university, quite often you're like pretty much put in a hole, like a box. You stay over there.
Hmm.
I think there's still so much more that you can give if you find the right employer.
Mm. Oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at my my LinkedIn, and if you think about what happened prior to my first job in recruitment, I've only not been sacked, or actually my last two jobs I left and then got made redundant. But prior to that, I pretty much got sacked, or just as I was about to get sacked, put my middle finger up and said, "Fuck you, I'm leaving." Like every single job in my entire life and school,
Hmm.
I failed miserably, absolutely miserably. Granted, I've said on the podcast I went through a lot of stuff during my time of during those sort of years and whatnot. But
Uh-huh.
like you said, I think it's really, really powerful what you just said there, because when the US election happened recently, they showed the quote educated voters versus quote uneducated voters, and it showed that more quote uneducated voters voted Trump. Obviously, I didn't go to university, I failed at school. I've got my own business. I'm doing quite well. I can hold myself in very intellectual conversations with people. I can debate way better than most people that have got degrees out their arse. But technically, I would come under that quote uneducated group of
Hmm.
people. And all throughout
Hmm.
my school, I always got told, if you continue like this, you'll never make anything of your life. You can't
Yeah.
concentrate. You can't sit still. You're constantly distracting people. You will fail in life. Imagine like
Yeah.
you've got a child.
Imagine
Imagine
being
your
told
teachers.
that.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Honestly, I was speaking to Neil Carberry from the REC about this.
Mm.
So, and again, no means an expert, but a part of our rebrand was to champion ED&I. And that's a
Mm.
whole host of things. Firstly, we both grew up in Luton, Chris and I. You don't get rougher than that. Like that is diverse. I've seen things that I can't unsee, but because of that, I'm pretty streetwise and I am
Mm.
so open. Couldn't be more open when it comes to people from different backgrounds.
Mm.
Second to that, I've had a situation recently where a client has questioned whether someone has got ADHD or not in an interview, and therefore ended the process and
Oh,
not taken the
Jesus Christ.
candidate any further, which absolutely made like me livid to the point where I signed up, like personally as well, didn't even put it through the business. Don't do it in working hours. I've been getting
Mm.
up at 5:30 every morning for the past 6 weeks to do
Mm.
a course on ADHD and autism
Mm.
so that I can better understand
Mm. That's
what it
amazing.
is, how you can accommodate people for us here, how we
Mm.
can make accommodation here for them and understand a bit better. And also, how the hell do you deal with that situation with a client? Because we can all talk about, you've got people that preach about ED&I, you've got people that moan about the people that preach ED&I.
Mm.
What no one really says is like, how would you give your consultants confidence in dealing with that? Because in that moment, I know I could deal with it, but could my 25-year-old or 30-year-old consultant that's never had that question posed to them before, what would they say in that
Mm.
moment? So stripping it all back, like, I can sit here and say to you, we've got 50% senior leadership team that are female. We've got 85% of our workforce, which is female, which absolutely bucks a trend in recruitment. But I think
Mm.
the biggest learning curve for me is the kind of neurodiversity
Mm.
element, and the things that you and I have just discussed. We do an awful lot of work with the YMCA, and
Mm.
90% of the young people at the YMCA who are homeless are neurodivergent. Um, and there's a massive gap out there because these
Mm.
people have been through past trauma,
Mhm.
and or just have had really
Mm.
hardship time, sorry, at school and things like that, and have been labeled just as you mentioned you were. There is
Mm.
no one, there is no role model for them. There's no one steering them in life. And actually, these could be fucking great workers. And we are missing a trick on out there. So we do a ton of work with the YMCA. We do loads of other partnerships locally for charity, but that's one that I'm most proud of because it's really tapping into different pools of talent out there that most people would overlook. Most of them haven't even got a CV. They don't know where to start. Or if someone sees that their address is the YMCA, they're not going to pick up the phone to them. And we go in there, empower them, lift them up, steer them. We recently placed one of them actually who started out as a temp and he's now going perm. So it's just, you know, for me, it's just about giving everyone an opportunity because I think everyone's got a gift in some way, shape or form, and it needs to be unveiled and explored.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And the analogy I give to people when they're like, "Oh, I think so and so in the team's got ADHD," and it's, you know, and I get it, right? You know, my mum and my brother, I've only got one brother. My mum's got Asperger's and she's got ADHD. My brother's got Asperger's and ADHD. I've got ADHD. My uncles have got ADHD or Asperger's. Like, it's all over my family. And one of my uncles is
Yeah.
dyslexic. So neurodiversity, literally all over my family, right? So I kind of understand the nuances between how somebody would interpret something if they're autistic or ADHD. But something I got told years ago, and I say this to people now, if they say that they think someone has got ADHD in their team, people with ADHD specifically, because I know more about that subject, are like those. Do you remember those toy cars that if you like roll them back and then they just and then you let go and it goes like that and just goes off, right? That's what a person with ADHD is like. The problem
Yeah.
with that is that sometimes they'll wind themselves up back and then they'll go, but those cars don't self-steer. So they won't know how to pivot. So they'll just get super hyper fixated in the complete wrong task or go completely off or that lane that they're going down is just pure distracting people in the office, which was exactly what I was like. And when I told that to my old boss, and I was like, I'm like one of those electric cars you pull back. What I need you to do is just as you see me winding, I just need you to steer me. And when I have that, like, oh, I'm ready, you just need to steer me and go. And then I'll be the best worker in the room. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'd work harder than most people. You know, I was amazing. I wanted to help people, always going the extra mile. But if I didn't have that guidance, like you say there, and I think it's beautiful what you said, a lot of young people specifically don't have that guidance, don't have those role models, and they just go off. And next thing you know, they're just fucking nowhere to be seen and they're lost. And then they've got
Yeah.
gambling problems and they got
100%.
this and they got that.
But I
So,
think ADHD specifically transpires into sales and marketing incredibly well
oh, yeah.
because you just see this most incredible person unveiled that has no preconceived ideas. They won't be told no. They just won't back down. It's just
Hmm.
unbelievable. The creativity there is just wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want to be in a position where I can confidently empower my team to be able to deal with
Mm.
those awkward conversations. It's not going anywhere. Like, and I think people are scared to lean into it because they think, oh, well, you've either got to be the person that knows everything about it, or you're the person that just kind of shies away from it. There is a middle ground. You can
Mm.
lean into it and be expected that you don't know everything. We don't know everything here, but it's a slow growing kind of process.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think what you just said there, Gemma, I think more people need to be doing that, having those conversations. And it's similar to what you said at the start when you told me that you'd been looking through the other episodes and how
Yeah.
wildly diverse the guests have been. And for me, another podcast host said this to me, and I was like, oh shit, actually, yeah, that's so true. She was like, you almost get like an hour of one-to-one learning from someone that's an expert. So like if I ever wanted to scale my business to 2 mil, I've just sat here and spent over an hour with someone that's been there and done it and has given me so many valuable things. Obviously, I had Joe on the podcast as an expert in D&I.
Yeah.
I felt like I could approach that conversation slightly, but after that
Uh-huh.
conversation, I'm so much more confident now that if I'm in an office and a hiring manager says, you know, a recruiter said, "Oh, the hiring manager said don't look at CVs if they say Patel or you know Kiriakou or whatever."
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
now help them. I'm not an expert. That's not my expertise. But now I've
Yeah.
learned a little bit about it. Like you said, there's that middle ground where I can say, right, here's how we could potentially pivot the conversation or approach it with the
Yeah.
client. So it's so good that
Honestly,
you've done that.
it like little things that I was taught back in the day, they would not stand a chance now. So like looking someone in the whites of the eyes, you know that someone that is autistic probably might struggle with that, and there is a reason behind that, and that's okay. Or you know, not all Muslim ladies would reach out to shake your hand, like, and that again is okay. But back in the day, that for me would be like a,
Yeah.
you know, a make or break. The way that I was trained is that you are assertive, you have a handshake, you do
Yep.
look someone in the whites of their eyes. Body language and eye contact is everything in an
Mm.
interview. But you know, we're just in a space now where everything is so different, from business development right through to this part of the recruitment process. So we just got to make sure that we aren't falling behind. And I think a lot of kind of the old school recruiters are, you know, since in the last few years or so, they are, sadly, and I'm talking like the bigger organizations where you don't have much flex and bend, you can't really have much of a say. I think it's the ones that are kind of gripping onto it and seeing it as, you know, an opportunity to learn and change and pivot. Like you said a moment ago, pivoting someone with ADHD, you've got to do that in business as well, because there's just so many twists and turns and things changing that innovation is key. And that's not even
100%.
getting on to AI, but I know we need to close soon. That one thing that I just wanted to finish up with is, much like you with your podcasting, Charles, and how successful that's been for you, is something that we really do. And I want to share this. I feel like recruiters can be a bit like this, but I want to share. I want us to do better as an industry. And one thing that we've done really well is built a solid community locally of HRDs, you know, human resources managers, and so on and so forth. So we've built and locked in a community, and we host regular events for them. It is for free. We don't get sponsors. It is entirely by Mixxos. We bring people together in a room and they bounce off of each other. It's a safe space for people to explore topics. We've done employee value proposition. We've recently done AI reality. We've got an International Women's Day one coming up in Q1 of next year. The ideas are just growing, the events are growing. It's something that I take personal pride in and a kind of drive from the front, because one thing that I know transform a business is the networking element. And it can be quite a scary space if you don't know, but you've got to be where your clients are. And if that is putting yourself out there and creating an event rather than attending an event that you know your clients are going to enjoy, get value from, take innovation back to their businesses and personally develop themselves while they're there, it's a no fucking brainer. Why would you not do it? It does take a lot. There's an awful lot that goes on behind the scenes to ensure you know what it's like. You have 150 say they're going to be there, you probably get 75 like turnout. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it's just about having the right topics to explore, discuss, and expand upon, much like yourself with the podcast.
Well, I'm telling you now, I'm going to be on the phone to you in the new year, because one of my goals that I've set myself, and I'm a firm believer, and I do this when I set goals for people, that they should really scare you but really excite you. And I set myself a goal that in 2025, I want to do a minimum of 1 to 2 live podcasts or live events. Not a Scooby when it comes to doing events. Never really done one. So yeah, have no idea where to start. But
I'll help you.
There we go. So I know that I've built a good enough network. So I know that there's going to be people that can help. And I've already had people that have been on the pod where I've shared that goal with them, and they said, "Mate, that'd be epic. I'll be someone on the panel if you want to have multiple panels." So I've already got like loads of people that are interested. But yeah, that'll be something, because I'm also so passionate about that, and I think that recruitment businesses that operate in a space that there are regular networking events or conferences, and they don't go to them because, like we said earlier, they're trying to be super efficient. You're missing the boat, mate. You're literally just being so short-minded. And I've told this story on the podcast before. I met a client at a exhibition in, when would it was? 2016 it was at there, or 2017 in the exhibition, because I initially called him, didn't realize he was a client. I thought he was a candidate. Literally took 3 years. I met him at every single urology exhibition, and then after like the third year in a row, he was just like, as soon as I walked over to the stand, he put his hand out and hello again. Like, I've seen you at every exhibition.
Really?
You're clearly like know your stuff. And I was like, I've been trying to work with you guys for ages, like, but it's just impossible to get on your PSL. And he was just like, come here, like that. Literally pulled out his mobile, just DM'd every single person in the talent team, and was like, this guy has been to every single exhibition like multiple times a year. Get him on the PSL. Literally went back to the office the next day, saw an email from like the global director of talent acquisition saying, "Hi Charles, you came highly recommended from one of the business unit directors. We're going to invite you into the offices to be a part of our new PSL." Took 3 years and like probably 12 exhibitions. The long game though. That's just the long game. You got to do it in recruitment.
Yeah, it is a long game. You're right. It's not like picking up the phone, following up a lead, bam, you get a job straight away. I question the loyalty of that client, to be honest. There is business, there are quick wins that come off the back of that, but it's not my kind of main driver in us, growing the business here. But I just think we don't sell at these events either, by the way. They are purely like topical educational events for our clients, open discussions, panels, etc. We don't sell, but it's the importance of the follow-up in the whole cycle of the process that's
Yeah.
the most important, is when you can get into the nitty gritty and the kind of long-term partnership with them. But no, 100% without a doubt, I'm here for you. You're not even that far away, are you? What are you,
No.
Hertfordshire?
Yeah. Not
You
not
come
far
down to
away.
the Mixxos office and we'll have a little,
Love
we can go through it
it.
all. But no, I'm sure you'll
Amazing.
make a huge success of it.
Yeah, no, yeah, like I said, scary, but more exciting than it is scary. So yeah, exciting stuff. Cool. All right, Gemma. Well, yeah, this has been amazing, and I think we could probably sit here for another 2 hours just chatting away. To be honest with you, it seems like the time has absolutely flown by. But as you
It
know, I
has.
finish every episode with the same question. Following this episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
Yeah, good question. So consistency for me is absolute king. Compound of interest. If you're doing something really well, even if it's something tiny, it all adds up. Just make sure you're doing it every day. So for example, if your mission in 2025 is to platform yourself in personal branding and really push yourself out there, kick it off with a bang, get your ideas together during December and schedule your first kind of month's worth of posting to get yourself up and out there. If it's to change a certain element of your process in recruitment, you know that there's a gap in the market, there's a pain point, there's something that you guys have done well, but you've not made a big hoo-ha about it. Make sure that it becomes something that you do non-negotiable every single day, every part of the process. So consistency is absolutely king. As you said, like going to the gym, you do that 3-4 times a week over the year, you're going to see results. Don't underestimate the little tiny details. If you do them consistently, you'll get the results.
Hey, if you do 1% better every day, eh?
There you go.
Love it. No, that's an awesome answer, Gemma. Thank you so much. So, for
Thanks,
people that want to
Charles.
reach out to you, obviously your business is growing. You're going to be hiring potentially not more people, etc. How do people reach out to you? Is there any other things that you got going on that you want to tell everyone about?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone can find me most on LinkedIn. That's kind of where I'm most active. Our website is www.mixxos.com. In terms of things coming up, not massively. I mean, there's been like lots of speaking opportunities coming off the back of some of the things we've already done. We do an awful lot with the local schools and colleges as well, so that naturally is having a bigger impact for us. We're doing some thought leadership stuff within the REC as well. I did the Rec Expo actually a few years
Hmm.
ago, which I absolutely loved, and that was a shit yourself moment for me because we were just like starting out then. We weren't
Mm.
even Mixxos at the time. We were still Somni in recruitment. It was quite a big deal. We're a very small team, but I knew I had something to share. And, you know, thanks to Louise Triance, it was a good opportunity
Mm.
for me. Kind of done it. I do enjoy going along still. But yeah, just what's next out there? Who knows? Who knows? For now, it's just doubling down on what we're doing here and just continue with our own client networking and events that we're putting on. It's been really
Nice
good
one.
to speak to you today, Charles. Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. No worries. Well, as you said, probably another public speaking gig that you'll have is the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast live event in 2025. So we'll
Love
put that
that.
down.
You're a closer, aren't you?
Got the deal on the
Love
podcast.
it.
Amazing. All right, Gemma, thank you very much. Anyone
Thanks.
who got to this far in the podcast, thank you very much for listening. Like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. The newsletter, it's December now. We hit way over 1,000 subscribers on the newsletter. So yeah, in December, when this comes out, it'll be probably January time. If you go on the newsletter, you'll see the download from every single episode. So you'll see like key quotes, all the topics, the answer to the final question. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to an episode and you think, I don't know what it was all about, you can literally go on the newsletter and go through that and go, oh, that was actually quite a good episode. I'll go and listen to that one. You might look at it and go, not for me, and you don't have to listen to it. So yeah, the newsletter, you can get all the download on that. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, watching, and until next time.